She's originally from Belarus. She joined the ITC in 2002, and she joined the Theosophy in 2010. She serves on the board of Carlton, California. She gives lectures, she works in the library, she designs and prepares for publishing the Lodge brochure, and her name is Olga Omlin.
Hi, everybody. Actually, I would like to make a correction that I do not serve on the board of Crotona. I'm a resident there, that is true, and I volunteer to work there, but I'm not on the board. It is very much my honor and a great privilege to be here and to present, so I'm very grateful. And I would like to remind us all that the members of the Theosophical Society, not only ADIA, but all the branches and all directions and groups, are united by the common aspiration for truth and not by any common belief or dogma. And I would like to quote HBP about that. We're all fellow students, more or less advanced, but no one belonging to the Theosophical Society ought to count himself as more than at best a pupil teacher, one who has no right to dogmatize. Various sources and people speak about Helena Petrovna Blavatsky in many different ways. For some, she was an incredible being, a messenger, who brought the light of divine wisdom to the world, driven by deep compassion for suffering humanity. To others, she was a destroyer of religion and a woman with a fiery temper. In the eyes of an aristocratic society, she was a challenge, with all her personality rebelling against the rules and social conventions. HBP Blavatsky described herself, "I hated society and so-called world, as I hated hypocrisy in whatever form it showed itself." She was a human as each one of us. Her niece Nadezhda Zhelichovsky wrote that her aunt liked to tell stories for fun. In Russian culture, family is very valued. And I believe it was the same or similar for Helena Petrovna. She wrote in one of her letters to AP Synod, "My aunt, Madame Witte, swore before the image of some Saint Flapdoodle that she would curse me on her deathbed if I permitted any memoirs to be published, so long as all my relatives are yet living. It is impossible to say truth without incriminating people that I would not accuse for the world, now that they're dead and gone. Rest it all on my back." Even though H.P. Blavatsky was the first Russian woman who became an American citizen, and I can relate to that because I became American citizen in February this year, she remained devoted to her home country. In her letter to her sister Vera, she wrote about her experience during the naturalization ceremony that actually remained the same even now. She wrote to her, "A nice scrap to get into, but now, how am I to manage to no longer love Russia or respect the emperor? It is easier to say a thing than to act accordingly." It is said that H.P. Blavatsky had an amazing power to attract people, that she was patient and persevering in her service to the Master and Theosophy. She was very sincere and easily trusted others, giving most the benefit of a doubt. The sincerity of her soul can be seen in her indifference to the public opinion about her. And perhaps this courageous and confident spirit gave her strength to carry on the mission to reveal the secret teachings underlying all religions, to help awaken the spiritual consciousness of humanity, and to become the first in her attempt to give a synthesis of science, religion, and philosophy, which can be found in many of her writings and mainly in the Sacred Doctrine. Yet, H.P. Blavatsky was extraordinary, even as a child. She was perceptive, sensitive, and surrounded by unusual phenomena. It is not easy to even perceive how challenging it must have been for Helena Petrovna to grow, being such an unusual child, and later becoming a center of attention, curiosity, and attacks from all corners of the world. Her first attempt to establish the Theosophical Society was closely connected with various phenomena. On one hand, it was done to show that the matter was not what the science of that time thought of it, and on the other hand, to argue the belief of the spiritualists solely in the spirits of the dead. She challenged the world to realize that the unseen is not the criterion for the spirituality. Nevertheless, later, she regretted her approach, as it generated in some a misunderstanding that Theosophy has primarily to do with psychic development. She was unafraid to admit a mistake in judgment and move on. From her very personal letters to her sister Vera, one can see Helena's hope to be understood in the deepest sense. She wrote, "Do not be afraid that I am off my head. All that I can say is that someone positively inspires me. More than this, someone enters me. It is not I who talk and write. It is something within me, my higher and luminous self, that thinks and writes for me. Do not ask me, my friend, what I experience, because I could not explain it to you clearly. I do not know myself. The one thing I know is that now, when I am about to reach old age, I have become a sort of storehouse of somebody else's knowledge. Someone comes and envelopes me as a misty cloud, and all at once pushes me out of myself, and then I am not I anymore, Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, but someone else." And that inner being was a driven power in HPB's theosophical work and the constant influence on the unfoldment of her entire life. As she expressed, "For the divine spiritual I is alone eternal, and the same throughout all births, whereas the personalities it informs in succession are evanescent, changing like the shadows of a kaleidoscopic series of forms in a magic lantern." She was absolutely devoted to her master and to the cause of Theosophy. Often ill and in many ways flawed, HPB was still the best instrument the adept hierarchy could find. She went through all sorts of discomforts and never really knew what was ahead of her. Through all her work, she emphasized that it is by our own merit, not with the help of a guru, can we work out our way to the unity with our inner divine essence. And on that ground, near the end of her life, she established Blavatsky Lodge in London that became the headquarters of the TS in Europe, and the esoteric section that was inspired by the masters. As she wrote in her letter to Indian members of the Theosophical Society, "Thenceforth, let it be clear understood that the rest of my life is devoted only to those who believe in the masters and are willing to work for Theosophy as they understand it, and for the TS on the lines upon which they originally established it. We may wonder if the teachings of Theosophy given in the Secret Doctrine, the Key to Theosophy, Isis Unveiled, are still relevant to the present world. Now, thanks to the selfless efforts of pioneer Theosophists, we're all familiar with the ideas of karma and reincarnation. Nevertheless, we are facing many of the same temptations. Some are drawn to the psychic phenomena, which are but another form of materialism, according to HBP. Or we may desire to accumulate more and more information, even in the form of theosophical knowledge. But knowledge can only be transformed into wisdom through a daily practice, through contemplation, meditation, and selfless service rooted in kindness and compassion. As HBP emphasized in her address to American Convention in 1889, therefore, it is that the ethics of Theosophy are even more necessary to mankind than the scientific aspects of the psychic facts of nature and man. The world inherited from this Russian woman a huge resource of practical, spiritual, and intellectual teachings. She pointed out the direction of the comparative study of science, religion, and philosophy. She inspired her motherland, Russia, to explore her roots in the East. And all of this humanity, yes, is destined to rediscover. A while ago, an inquirer on Facebook asked in regards to the posting on Founders' Day if we worship the founders of the Theosophical Society. It is sad to see such a misunderstanding and misinterpretation of our gratitude for the founders' great effort to forward the work of the elder brothers in behalf of humanity. And who are these elder brothers, or the Mahatmas, or the masters of HBP, whose willing instrument she chose to become? H.P. Blavatsky puzzled the Western world when the information about the Brotherhood of the Masters of the Wisdom who possessed knowledge of contemporary scientific discoveries and also of those that had yet to be made, their ability to precipitate letters and inspire ideas via thoughts. For some Westerners, a concept of the Mahatmas revealing to the so-called developed world some ancient truths was curious. Others named it to be false. Nevertheless, initiates can be traced throughout the history of mankind. They inspired and encouraged new religious views or insights and founded philosophical schools appropriate to their names. No matter how we name and understand them, they are spiritually evolved individuals who chose the bodhisattva path, the path of self-sacrifice, altruism, divine kindness and compassion, incarnating perhaps for many lifetimes to help suffering humanity. From them, theosophical truths have been given through HBP. They were the inspirational force behind the founding of the Theosophical Society. In Mahatma's and Chalice, HBP writes, "And whoever therefore wants to see the real Mahatma must use his intellectual sight. He must so elevate his manas that its perception will be clear and all mists created by Maya must be dispelled. This perception of the manas may be called faith, which should not be confounded with blind belief. Blind faith is an expression sometimes used to indicate belief without perception or understanding, while the true perception of the manas is that enlightened belief, which is the real word of faith. This belief should at the same time be accompanied by knowledge, that is, experience, for true knowledge brings with it faith. This idea is implied in the third object of the Theosophical Society Adya, to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the powers latent in man. And in my perception, the word man used here means manu or manas, which is the thinking principle and the human soul. Studying the Mahatma letters give us a glimpse of their characters, views, and vision. They are beyond the personal karma and do not express any favors. To quote HBP, although the whole of humanity is within the mental vision of the Mahatmas, they cannot be expected to take special note of every human being, unless that being, by his special acts, draws their particular attention to himself. The highest interest of humanity as a whole is their special concern, for they have identified themselves with the universal soul, which runs through humanity, and he who would draw their attention must do so through that soul which pervades everywhere. The masters are interested in the present, but their main concern is the future. HBP said, and every mistake is so much more accumulated wisdom for days to come. And I think we all can relate to that. They're the embodiment of love and holiness, but their real holiness may be completely different from what our preconceived idea of holiness is. They see things as they are and speak in very clear terms, but they do not tell anyone how to act, but give only a direction of progress of possibilities. They understand our strengths and weaknesses and never give up on us. The masters do not guide the society, not even the founders, and no one has ever asserted that they did. They only watch over it and protect it, said HPV. Their aim is Universal Brotherhood, for which the TS is a testing ground. In his letter number 4, Master Kutumi writes, the term Universal Brotherhood is no idle phrase. It is the only secure foundation for universal morality. If it be a dream, it is at least a noble one for mankind, and it is the aspiration of the true adept. Reading the Mahatma letters and letters of the masters compiled by C. Rajadasa, one cannot help but feel in devotion and reverence to them. But it has nothing to do with worship. The masters need co-workers to help them in their tremendous work to guide the spiritual development of humanity, and not a single effort for the sake of the TS is ever in vain. The master can influence human evolution only so far. We ourselves must be moving away from the realm of materialism into the realm of spirituality. Realizing how challenging a path of spiritual transformation may be, the masters suggest the necessity of a gradual dissemination and assimilation of theosophical teachings. Because for our egoistic, self-defensive, animal-human nature resisting the change, it's it can be very harmful, any radical interference all of a sudden. HBP wrote in her letter to the 1888 American Convention, "According as people are prepared to receive it, so will new theosophical teachings be given. But no more will be given than the world on its present level of spirituality can profit by. It depends on the spread of theosophy, the assimilation of what has been already given, how much more will be revealed and how soon." In their letters, the Mahatmas wrote about the path of discipleship, which is open to anyone willing to serve the spiritual needs of humanity as a whole. It is the path that allows us to become an instrument of light, a path that brings confidence and truth in the laws of the higher life, that all is well, and the deeper understanding of our true nature. The Master K.H. wrote, "To accept any man as a chela does not depend on my personal will. It can only be the result of one's personal merit and exertions in that direction. Force any one of the masters you may happen to choose. Do good work in his name and for the love of mankind. Be pure and resolute in the path of righteousness as laid in our rules. Be honest and unselfish. Forget yourself, but to remember the good of other people. And you will have forced the master to accept you." The masters want us to realize for ourselves the plan of manifestation emanating from divine mind by exercising the faculties of our own higher principles. The idea of progressive appearance of the adepts during the long history of mankind does not belong to particular exoteric teaching or religion. HBP explained in the Sacred Doctrine that human beings will be guided towards a correct comprehension of ancient wisdom until they are spiritually enough to continue on their own. A concept of Messiah is common in various religious traditions. For example, it is expressed in the idea of the Kalki avatar, the white horse avatar or Maitreya Buddha or Savior, who will appear at the end of this cycle, which is Kali Yuga, and would bring back the golden age to the earth. The deeper meaning of such doctrines beyond the literal need to be explored, especially in their relevance to our times and life today. In The Circle Moveth, HBP stated that periodically, in the last quarter of every century, the messengers were sent westward. It seems that their appearance is triggered by the spiritual crisis of humanity. What is their mission, according to HBP? To remind the mankind of its divine nature and spiritual evolution. They are people endowed with spiritual intuition and who have the key to the secrets of nature. According to HBP, the appearance of such messengers as Saint Germain and Cagliostro was not much appreciated in the 18th century, that was characterized by the prevailing mere scientific learning and the lack of soul perception. But their spiritual stagnation itself produced a wave of longing and unsatisfaction with pure materialism, which in its turn inspired mediumistic manifestations and culminated with the spread of spiritualism in the 19th century. This historical evidence is a wonderful example of power of thought. However, this wave towards psychic phenomena was clouding the minds of the people in the West. The masters chose HBP to become a messenger in order to reveal the true meaning of the latent powers and divine wisdom within us. In my understanding, the Messianic Cycle represents the evolution of our consciousness, which is the realization of unity of life, that everything around and within us is endowed with power, which is the light of the Spirit. Such realization will manifest itself in the world in the Universal Brotherhood of humanity. As HBP wrote in her letter, on the day when Theosophy will have accomplished its most holy and most important mission, namely to unite firmly a body of men of all nations in brotherly love and bent on a pure altruistic work, not on a labor with selfish motives. On that day only will Theosophy become higher than any nominal brotherhood of man. This will be a wonder and a miracle truly, for the realization of which humanity is vainly waiting for the last 18 centuries, and which every association has hitherto failed to accomplish. I believe that in the present cycle of the spiritual and psychic and physical evolution, our main aspiration must be universal brotherhood. That has been the vision of the masters and the main object of the Theosophical Society. Perhaps, if each one of us is more vigilant and assertive in choosing thoughts of unity and becoming an example of true brotherhood in their own lives, we will be able to attract more attention and interest to Theosophy. It is not the intellectual side of it that is missing in the life of mankind, because now, like never before, we have access to almost any information, but deep within, we are longing for that love, compassion, and wisdom that goes beyond any physical form, time, and space. Theosophy teaches self-reliance, because the only true teacher is within us. The light of our spiritual intuition is the best guide on the path of self-knowledge and unity. Thank you.
Thank you, Olga. So I think we have, thanks to our three speakers of this morning, lots to think about, but also lots to talk about. We're going to do that in groups. Erwin, if you could help me showing some slides. What I would like to ask you to do is find your group and your room first, and then go looking for coffee and bathrooms.